Hello everyone and welcome to my channel again. My name is Catalina and I'm the person behind by Catalina Designs, and in this video I want to share with you a few tips on how to find the perfect substitute yarn for a specific project or pattern. I know that sometimes it's difficult to find the specific yarn that is indicated in the pattern. For example, I am a crochet designer from Europe, based in Netherlands, and I know that the yarn that I'm using might be difficult to find in US, in Australia, or in other countries or continents all over the world. So I think that these tips are really important to know, and it will make it easier for you to achieve the final result that you are expecting for, or even if you're not you won't achieve the same result, at least to know from the beginning, from the moment that you are choosing your yarn, to have some hints on how your project in the end might look like. So from explaining the yarn weight, from explaining the yardage, because this is another thing that is important, on how to adjust the gauge swatch if you kind of found a different yarn, why is the texture important, and so on. So if you want and you will think that this is an interesting video to watch, then please follow along, please stay with me, and I hope that you will find some interesting tips into this video. Okay, so when you are choosing or looking at a pattern, or some of our favorite designers post a video or a photo with one of their upcoming or newest pattern that they have, and you like so much the photo, you like so much the video, and you want to try it on, but you know that it might be difficult to find that specific yarn, and sometimes you tend to give up on that project because you know that if you're not using the same yarn, the final result won't be the same. Well, this is yes and no, but you need to know one thing, that it might be unique, it might be different a bit, but it might be perfect, or it might be better. So don't worry, don't give up on something that you would like to make just because of the yarn. And now I will help you and give you some tips on how to find the closest yarn, and also at the end of this video I will share some tools for you that you can use to substitute yarn, or to find the perfect substitute yarn, including AI. So you might be interested in the latest part, but keep watching because I will share with you some valuable information and tips about how to substitute the yarn. So the first and number one tip is the yarn weight. Yarn weight is important because all that you can see in the picture or in the video, the drape of the garment, the look of the garment, how it fits, everything is related to yarn weight. Yarn weight, and then it comes with the stitch pattern, the crochet hook size that was used. So but yarn weight is really important, and you need to know that the yarn is there are multiple categories of yarn according with the weight. And what is exactly the weight the yarn weight, or the category of yarn? Well, it's basically how much is the yarn weight. So if the strand, the yarn itself, the wire is thicker, then this will weigh more. So in the same weight, meaning 50 grams or 100 grams or 200 grams, you will have a different yardage. So you will have the length of the entire skein of yarn will be more or less depending on the width. And this will affect your gauge, this will affect the amount of yarn that you might need. This will affect the look of the final project, the drape and everything. So it's important when you want to substitute the yarn to look at the yarn weight specified in the pattern and to find the same category of yarn. Even if the pattern, for example, because I'm using quite often, for example, I'm using sport weight yarn but with a 4mm crochet hook, which is mostly recommended for a DK weight yarn. So you might think that, okay, if I will use a 4mm crochet hook, then I can use a DK yarn as well. Well, you might get to the same gauge, meaning if you're swatching to have the same number of stitches as in the pattern, but your final look of the garment, the drape and everything might be different. Not necessarily that it will be worse or not looking good at all, but your expectation needs to be from the beginning to know what you tend to go for. So if you're choosing a different yarn weight, then everything might change. And the most important, even if you're getting to the same gauge, will be the drape of the garment. And especially if we're talking about garment, I know that this is really, really important to have that flawless, nicely garment that you will want to wear. So drape is everything in garments, so that's why I consider that the yarn weight is really important. So you're checking the yarn weight that you want to that is specified in the pattern, and for your yarn or brand that you want to use, you need to go into the same category preferably. Next, you want to look at the fiber content of the yarn that designer used in the pattern, because even if it's the same DK weight yarn, but it depends if it's cotton, silk, wool, acrylic, and so on. So you need to know that if you're not using the same fiber or some fiber that can be substituted easily, then your result might be different. So if the designer used cotton and you'll use acrylic, then for sure you won't have a garment that it will be wearable in the summer. Or if you're using some other fibers that are mostly used for the warmer garments or the coldest days, not necessarily to be worn in the summer. So you need to pay attention to the fiber and fiber content, because most of the yarn doesn't have only cotton or 100% cotton or 100% merino or something like that. And also this will help you with substituting the fibers, because for example, if the designer used acrylic but you don't want to use synthetic fibers and you want to go to something more natural, then you will need to know that what kind of yarn you can substitute with, because if it's acrylic and you're using cotton, it might not be the same. So yeah, but this is, I think, is another topic, how to substitute natural fibers with synthetic fibers or reverse to have the same or appropriate result. Now we're focusing on how to substitute the yarn for a specific project. Anyways, if it's cotton, we are going with cotton or cotton blends, but cotton blends that are for summer, if it's a summery project. So you can use cotton with bamboo, you can use cotton with viscose, you can use cotton with silk, you can use cotton with there are some summer fibers which are cotton with acrylic, but you need to pay attention on the amount of acrylic and also the texture of the yarn, because there are some cotton and acrylic blends for summer, and there are some cottons and acrylic blends that are more suitable for winter because of the texture of the yarn. So this is another topic and tip that you need to pay attention at, is the texture of the yarn. So after you decided on the fiber content of that specific yarn, you will need to find in your preferred brand to find those blends or those fibers that are similar with the fibers that are specified in the pattern, and then to look at the texture of the yarn, because if that acrylic that is mixed into the cotton with the cotton is made as a fluffy thingy, then you will have a winter project and not a summery project. So then you will need to look. Another tip and another important thing that you need to pay attention at is the yardage. Lately, yarn brands are innovating the yarn, make it to look more fluffier, thicker, but in the same time to be lighter. So I worked with yarn that were like in bulky category yarn, so super thick, but the yardage was like a for medium weight or DK weight yarn. So in the end, if you're using the same weight as we said at the point number 1, but the yardage is different, meaning in the pattern the yardage is per skein is really big, then you will end up with a heavier project, and you need to know that. It's not that you cannot use it, but you need to know that from the beginning. So that's why it's important to look at the yardage. So try to find a similar length per grams, if that it makes sense. Meaning that in the pattern is specified that the specific yarn has or comes in 50 grams skeins and 120 meters, then you need to find something similar with that. In this way, you know that your project, or you will, even for the amount of yarn or the number of skein that you will be using, this is really important. Because if in that specific pattern they use the 6 skein of yarn of 130 grams and you have 6 skein of yarn of 50 grams and 120 meters, I said grams, so again we have 6 skeins, 50 grams and 130 meters and in the pattern, and we have 6 skeins of 50 grams and 120 meters. This means that 10 meters difference multiplied by 6 will end up with 60 meters of yarn that we will need to finish this project. It's not that it's not going to work, but you will need to know from the beginning that you might need an extra skein to buy just to make sure that you'll have enough yarn to finish your project. So always look at this at yardage as well, because in this way you will avoid not having enough yarn, or even with the weight of your project, at least you will know from the beginning that it will weigh more. Next, you need to swatch. It's good to have a gauge swatch, even if your yarn is slightly different. You need to make a gauge swatch to switch between the hook sizes until you will get to have slightly the same gauges in the pattern. And I'm saying slightly the same because sometimes might not be exact, and you don't need to be scared about that. Sometimes one stitch different if you're working a pretty large project that requires to have I don't know, 100 centimeters or something like that. Consider that when you're having only one stitch different, if you have 100 centimeters, one stitch difference per 10 centimeters will mean that you will have 10 centimeters that will be with your project being bigger or smaller, and this can count a lot on the final project and how your project will look like or how it will fit if it's a garment. So you need to be as closer as possible with the gauge that is specified in the pattern, and you can achieve that. Actually, if you are playing with your tension, with the hook size, you can achieve that. But it's important, once you achieve that, when making a swatch sample, it's important to measure your gauge while you're working, because your tension might change during work. If your speed is increasing, maybe you tend to work looser. If I don't know, or maybe you tend to work tighter at some points in the project. So you need to keep measuring your gauge and to adjust your tension, so you will keep up the same tension as in the sample, in the gauge swatch. So making a gauge swatch is crucial even with when we're trying to substitute yarn. Next, you will want to look at the colors. You know, sometimes a specific color that the designer used is kind of the thing that you like the most. So maybe if you want to choose different colors, maybe if you put different tones together, it will be something different. So that's why you need to set up your mind and know what you want, because if that specific designer used pink and you're not necessarily a pink lover, then you need to go and at least to choose and to pick the same tone of color. For example, pink is included into cold tones, even if it's with red, but it's kind of not into the warmth. So, and depending of the pink, of course, if it's a more peachy one and has a bit of yellow, then you might consider it a warm tone. But it's important to go for the same tone, warm, cold, meaning blues, purples, to go with the same tone of color. And yeah, because this will affect, and of course it's about your expectation, because this is the important thing, to know from the beginning what to expect for, and to know that the changes that you made to the pattern or substituting the yarn, the fiber, everything, at least to know what is the direction that you're going to, because then you might end up still being pleased with the result. If you change a lot of things and you expect to have the same result as a designer, then you might be disappointed. That's why it's important from the beginning, from when you're choosing the yarn, to know what to expect. And I said about the texture of the yarn that this is important as well. This is important because some of the yarns are one ply and it will get a bit more fluffier. Maybe I said about the cotton, and I had the cotton and wool mix that I use for the loose knitting sweater, which is a summer blend, because the merino in it is not fluffy, it has a different texture. So that's why it is important, the texture of the yarn, because you can use multiple fibers even in the summer, except acrylic, of course. I won't recommend it for summer. But for wools, for example, merino or other type of wools can be used in the summer, but it's really important, the texture of the yarn. And yeah, another tip that I want to share with you is to be free, unleash your creativity, and I don't know, try it on, experiment. This is the most beautiful thing that you can do with this, because nothing is permanent with crochet. So anytime if you don't like it, you can unravel everything and start it all over. But please be free and experiment whatever you have in mind. It's really important to experiment and to be free and have fun with it, because this is the most beautiful thing. And crochet is not something permanent. You can always unravel if you don't like a specific project or yarn that you use, and you can start all over again. So but being free, having fun, experiment with different fibers, with different stitches, you might end up with something more unique and even more beautiful than the original designer's work. So don't be afraid to unleash your creativity, because you might be surprised of how beautiful, of how wonderful the final projects can be. That I will share with you a few tools that will help you to substitute the yarn. There is a website which is the yarnsub.com. If you're entering a specific yarn that it's still available on the market, then they will give you the closest substitute width of the yarn. They will match key points of the yarn, like what I said now, the weight, the fiber, everything, the gauge and whatever. And they will give you starting with the most the closest yarn to that specific yarn that you typed in, to less. They are making up like 98% matching and so on, or 60% matching. And this can be really helpful, especially because they are giving the brand of the yarn that you can use. And if you know that it's a brand that is really available in your country, then it's an easy way to do it. Then with the AI, actually now you can use AI for everything. So if you want to use a prompt to give you the perfect substitution for the yarn used in the pattern, you need to know that you need to enter all of the details that we talked right now. So I need to find me a yarn available in, and type your country, that has this weight, that has this yardage, that has this color, that has this yarn composition, the composition of the yarn. And you can also type in the pattern name, the designer, and so on, because AI might look into all the information that you gave it and to find the perfect substitute for it. And maybe in some video we will try a few prompts for it, but you feel free to try it on. And yeah, I think it will be a really interesting way of finding the perfect substitute yarn. But you need to know that as many details as you're giving into the prompt, you are more likely to have a result that is closer to what you want or what you need. So yeah, I hope all these tips, so you find these tips useful. I hope that this will help you out choosing your next the yarn for your next project. Don't forget, every time if you have questions or suggestions about something specific regarding crochet or knitting, I will be happy to give you my advice, or I don't know, make a video about it. So thank you so much for being here with me for another video. I won't say that it's a crochet tutorial or knitting tutorial or something. And yeah, see you next time. Let me know what you think, and if you have some other tips for substituting the yarn or tools, please feel free to share them with us, because in this way we can grow together and find more stuff that will be useful for us. Thank you so much, and see you next time.